If we can get into a room with a potential client and show them what we can do on the technology side, we win 9 times out of 10. The question is, how do we get all of those messages out to everybody? And I think
Welcome to the Bold Brand Show. If you're in the AEC industry and want to grow your firm, we're sharing exactly how bold and innovative firms win more. The sad truth is, most firms that are struggling in the AEC industry are still doing things the way we've always done them. But this show is about finding a better way. I'm your host and founder of Bold Brand, Josh Miles. I'm a published author, veteran of the TEDx stage, and a brand strategist with over 25 years of experience. But my superpower is my focus on AEC firms to understand how branding and marketing in the professional services industries is wildly different than for retail brands like Apple, Amazon, or Starbucks. So in this podcast, we're going deep with AEC firm leaders, marketers, and innovators in the AEC industry. We'll focus on the hottest topics and trends in AEC to uncover the growth secrets of the most successful firms and how firms can create lasting legacies and perhaps what the future has in store. Today's show is brought to you by Open Asset. AEC pursuits are more competitive than ever, and the best firms know it's not just about what you say, but what you show. In fact, 72% of AEC marketers agree visual content is the key to winning work. And that's where Open Asset comes in. It's the leading smart digital asset management platform built for AEC firms. With AI-powered tools for writing, searching, and tagging all your projects and files, it's easier than ever to tell your firm's unique story through visual content. And because Open Asset integrates with top AEC tools, your project data and marketing content stay connected every step of the way. Ready to see how Open Asset will transform your pursuit workflows? Bold Brand Show listeners get 1 month free. Visit pages.openasset.com/bold to learn more. Special thank you to Open Asset. I've got a special deal to share with you from my friends at BizNow. I regularly hit up BizNow events here in Denver, and honestly, they're my go-to for networking in commercial real estate and AEC. Each month, they pull together these great panels with heavy-hitting speakers who actually know what's happening right now in different markets. Not just theory, but real deals and trends. What's cool is they're not just a Denver thing. They run these events across the country. So if you're looking to stay on top of market shifts or want to connect with people making moves in CRE, it's worth checking out. If you're interested, check out BizNow. That's BISNOW.com/events to see what's coming up. You can use the code BOLD, that's BOLD, when you register to save 15% on your ticket. Trust me, the connections you'll make are worth it. Special thank you to BizNow. On today's episode, we're chatting with Christian Giordano. Christian is the president and co-owner of Mancini Duffy, a national architecture, interiors, and planning firm celebrating 110 years of innovation and design excellence. He's also the inventor of the Toolbelt and fellow podcaster, host of the Anti-Architect podcast. Driven by a quest for learning with 25 years or more years of experience, Christian, the Anti-Architect, is reimagining the building industry with a progressive approach as president and co-owner of Mancini Duffy. Christian has sparked an industry-wide change, drawing inspiration from some of his tech-forward clients that they've worked with, like Peloton, Disney, Verizon, and Soho House, focusing on technology that can propel the world of design forward. He launched a research and development incubator, dubbed the Design Lab, which brings together designers, technologists, and clients to leverage technologies like VR, 3D printing, drones, generative design, and AI to break barriers, limiting design capabilities. Christian, welcome to the Bold Brand Podcast.
thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, hey, on this podcast, we want to learn from you, like what you're thinking about, the challenges you're facing, successes you've had, and some of the boldest moves that you've made. For listeners who may be familiar with my previous podcast, The Obsessed Show, I had the pleasure of chatting with Christian 3 years ago. And so we'll definitely link that to the show notes if you want to go back in time a little bit. How's your show going? Catch me up on that.
My show's going great. It's funny. First of all, I can't stand the sound of my own voice, so it's hard to go back and listen to some of the episodes. But whenever I run into somebody, which quite frankly in our industry is a lot of people, they'll tell me that they listen to the show and that they really appreciate it, and they kind of get it. They understand that I'm not anti-architecture, that that's a catchy name, and that it's really to help the industry and have an open dialogue about the industry. And they there's a lot of positive feedback on it, which is great. And I always tell everyone, please, if you're going to listen to it, listen to the more current episodes. I think we're up to about 72 or 73 episodes, something like that. It's been about 3 years, and just listen to the more current ones, because I think I've gotten better as an interviewer, and I
Great.
am by no means a professional broadcaster. So, but yeah, thanks for asking.
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely not my first podcast, but it is the first podcast episode of the Bold Brand podcast. So it is always tough to go back to listen to yourself at all, like to hear your own voice, let alone those early episodes. So I can definitely relate. So broadly today, we're digging into innovations that you've spearheaded in the architecture and design industry. And specifically, you've positioned your firm as very tech forward. Lots of firms talk about technology, but you're actually building your own tech. And we talked 3 years ago, back on that original podcast, about your software, the Toolbelt. And it sounds like it's matured further. So for those of us who might be unfamiliar with the tool belt, like fill us in on the latest. Like what is the tool belt and where's that stand?
Yeah, so the tool belt actually is now patented. It's a patented piece of technology.
Very cool.
Essentially, uh, what it is architects and designers work in a program called Revit, mostly, which is a 3D building information modeling software, which brings together ideally all the trades: mechanical, electrical, plumbing, structural, low voltage, as many trades as we can get in there, all in one database driven 3D model. And so, what our software does, called the tool belt, is it takes that model at any stage. It can be from the very beginning, the first day we jump in with design, or all the way through into construction documents. It compresses the polygon count, takes with it all of the textures and information that's baked into the Revit model, and then it pushes it into our proprietary VR AR software called the Toolbelt. And we call it the tool belt because when you're in VR or AR, you look down at your waist and you see a series of tools that pop up. And so that
That's
was
genius.
basically it. Yeah. So you can do all sorts of different things within that model, right? You can move around, obviously. You can physically walk within the parameters of your given environment. But you can essentially, teleport around the model, 360-degree view of everything. Within there, you can manipulate the model, so you can move the furniture, you can change the color on the ceiling, add walls, add light fixtures, change the lighting. What we find very powerful with it is the ability to experience space. There's really no drawing that we can do that shows what a space will feel like. We can emote certain types of feelings and things through renderings or physical materials, but we do a lot of hospitality and restaurants, and that we have a particular client that in this restaurant or bar restaurant, they want to see you have to see two televisions from every seat in the entire restaurant, and it's basically a giant sports bar. And
Yeah.
we've done, I think, 15 or 16 locations for them. There's no drawing we could do that shows what you can see from every single seat. So this
Right.
software enables that, right? There's no drawing we can do that shows what a chef sees when he bends down and looks underneath a series of hoods from one side of the kitchen to the other, right? And the act of the acting out space, which is kind of what we're doing here with the software, really just propels the decision making, further and further along, much more than a traditional way that we always did things.
Yeah, that's super cool. And I love the idea that the all of the interaction is like right at your belt. I think you mentioned on I was listening to one of your shows and you're talking about how you also changed that for COVID so that you can do this remotely as well. Is that still a feature of the software or is most people like in person?
Most people do like it in person. We can even the headsets, even since COVID, have gotten significantly more powerful. So we used to have to be tethered to a computer. Originally, it was tethered to a desktop, and then a laptop, and now the headset itself can power the experience.
Mm,
So we
super.
can bring that experience to site. And so we definitely still do it via what we would call an immersive version through a Zoom or a Teams link. And so we have the online version of it, but it's still best to do with a headset. And then the cool thing in terms of evolution of it is it's gotten better and better. Obviously, we've made improvements to it, but we've also really gotten into the augmented reality side of
Mhm.
it. So we're now going to a site and we're bringing 5 different headsets and we're putting, 5 people with the headset on, and we're having this kind of like virtualized meeting in a raw space, but you're looking at what's going to be there built, in the future. And now we can do all those same things with the tools, but in the physical location that the place is going to be. I mean, you can see through it so you don't, kill
Mm.
yourself by walking into it or to your death over a stair or anything like that, but you can interact with everybody, and you can also interact with the 3D model. So it's really further, much further along in the last 3 years.
Very cool. And congrats on the patent piece of that as well.
Thank you.
We talked in the intro about the design lab, so I'm kind of curious to hear about the other elements of technology that you guys are leveraging in terms of like 3D printing and drones and generative design. Like, how does that all come to play within the lab?
Yeah, so and it's funny, when you were talking about it, kind of, talking about the technology-driven side of things, I think it's just popped into my head. I think as much technology-driven as we are, there is, we're culture is just as important in our company as the technology. And it's because we have the right people and the entrepreneurial side of the culture that we've built at the company that enables all of the tech driven things that we do. It's really, where I was the one initially that came up with all the ideas of what we were going to do. I mean, honestly, the crew that we have now, they're the ones that come and tell me, "Hey, these are the things that we're looking at, and this is where I think we can take this," or "This is the new thing that we're experimenting with." So it's really a cool evolution of everything. So yes, we're tech driven, but we're more entrepreneurial driven than anything else, that we're using the tech side of it to push it forward. And so the things that we're doing in the lab are it's very much the AR VR, right? That's still the primary thing that we do because what we
Hmm.
do is visual, and getting those clients to see their spaces and all of that is really the most important thing in the design world. Um, but we are doing a lot now with artificial intelligence, and I know that that's like, obviously a big thing, and it's all you hear about when you tune in CNBC and
Hmm.
NVIDIA and all that stuff. We've been using AI for quite a while, and again, we're using it on the visual side of things, right? We no longer. It's crazy. We used to go and search the internet for images. And if, let's say, we were doing a restaurant and we're starting out with a restaurant, we're meeting with the chef, we're meeting with the owner, we'd come in and we'd search the internet for days, print out a bunch of pictures, and then try to categorize them. This is like rustic, this is modern, this is
Yeah, like different
Venetian.
mood boards, right?
Yeah, exactly. Create all these mood boards, and they'd pick, and now we just use AI. We create the mood boards on our own. We want to show stuff with high tables, low tables, with dark finishes, light finishes, and we can produce these things and then curate and curate and curate and get them to where we need them to make those decisions, right? And so we're saving hours and hours and hours, and we're honing in on a design so much quicker than we would before. So just little things like that. It's just images that AI
Yeah.
is creating, and we have some masters of prompting. I mean, they know how to write those descriptions of what they need and get the most amazing images out of them, where I always get like just kind of like junk.
Yeah. I always get the guy with 6 fingers and the Yeah.
Exactly,
I'm not
exactly.
I'm not a master prompt writer just yet.
Yeah, so but they're really good at that, and so we'll use that. There's other things in the AI world, where we're, you know, doing checks on our drawings or making sure that things that we pick up on a constant basis in our drawings with our teams are actually being identified in even in a spreadsheet, right? It'll kick back a spreadsheet and say, your wall types, you're this, you're that, these are where your errors are all the time. And so we know now to go back and check those things first, right? Little dumb mistakes that every architect makes because you're just kind of, you're making small modifications. We
Mhm.
clean those up in no time, which is amazing. And then the 3D printing has gotten much more advanced. So initially we were doing, let's call it cute little 3D prints. We're now, printing parts of the built environment. We're printing signage. We're printing light fixtures. We're printing, decorative artifacts in there. We did an awards for somebody, and we printed all their 3D printed awards,
That's super
shelf.
cool.
Yeah, pretty cool stuff.
I know you guys were talking about even 3 years ago, I think you're about to move into new space and you were trying to print the light fixtures in one of the spaces.
Yeah, we did. We have a bunch of our own 3D printed and designed light fixtures, which is cool.
Super cool. Shifting gears a little bit, I know that the firm is now over 110 years old. So conventional wisdom might be if your firm wants to do something really innovative or you're an entrepreneurial guy and like you would start fresh, right? Like most people wouldn't dream of trying to reinvent a 100-plus-year-old firm, but that's the route that you went. So curious to hear like your strategy on doing that versus trying to do your own thing.
Yeah, I don't know. I look back and I don't think I had like quite a crafted plan in my head, to be honest with you. It'd be nice to tell you, like, hey, I had this whole thing planned out. But a lot of it was just opportunity that came along, and I
Hmm.
took risk to kind of make it happen. And then when I realized, like, oh wait, I'm in the driver's seat, now I'm responsible for all of these employees and
Hmm.
people and their families and so on and so forth. We have to differentiate ourselves somehow. And I've always been more on the technology side. I've always wanted to have my own architecture firm
Mm.
and make it the way that I thought it should be run in terms of the culture and the people, and making it, yes, we work really hard. Um, we work long hours, but we try to have fun. We try to be fair. We try to, push back on our clients if they're being too aggressive and things like that, right? Stand up for our employees, all that stuff. And together it makes a better environment. So I always wanted to have that aspect of it. The fact that the firm itself, when I really kind of think about Ralph Mancini, who is really what we'd consider the founder of the firm, um, Ralph was a dynamic guy. I mean, he was very ahead of himself, right? He wanted a fun firm to work at. He was a very fun guy. He didn't have a seat at the office. He
Mhm.
would walk around the office and just kind of sit down and chat with the person next to him, and then chat with the next person next to him, and then go to a meeting and go to lunch and go to dinner. And he was the client guy, or go to a job site. He was the ultimate kind of like hoteling guy before hoteling was a thing in corporate office. And so he was very forward thinking. So it kind of does make sense that we've just kind of kept that forward thinking mindset going. But it kinda all happened when I was able to, myself and some of the other, partners, when we purchased the firm from the previous generation, we really wanted to differentiate ourselves. And in the world of architecture and interior design, especially at the time we were purely in New York City, it can become very commoditized. And, you're doing an interior space, it's X amount of dollars per square foot, and you just do that. And unless you have the relationship, you're not going to get the job. And we wanted to get past that somehow, right? And so the tech driven approach, the culture driven approach, really good design, really getting ourselves out there and exposing ourselves and kind of saying, well, hey, this is a firm with 100-year-old history, with a great history and a great legacy, but kind of forget all that. We're new and we're young. And yeah, we have a name you might recognize, but you know, we're here to kind of, change things around and be and uh, kick ass, right? Like we're not your traditional architecture firm.
Yeah, super cool. I mean, from the looks of things, you're not slowing down anytime soon either. I know our industry is often fueled when it comes to growth in terms of M&A activity. You know, you want to win work in another city, you go acquire a firm that's in that town. So I'm curious to hear. I know that you guys just finished an acquisition, so I'm kind of curious about like what your goal for headcount or your growth strategy looks like, and is there more to come anytime soon?
Yeah, so our goal is I will say that, while it wasn't planned as to kind of how I was going to take over the firm and how we were going to, change things. Once I did take over, we started putting together plans and we worked with, outside coaches and business advisors that have kind of always helped us through. We've been working with one recently, the same thing, right? How do we continue to scale the business? And my feeling is that we need to constantly be growing.
Mhm.
Um, and we can grow a number of different ways. One is through acquisitions, and one is through obviously kind of planting a flag with some people in other cities. And that's kind of what we've done in a few other cities. I'll come back to that in a second. But as far as we did just make an acquisition in Tampa, and again, in that we wanted to be in Florida. We had looked in Miami and, kind of all those areas. And ultimately we ruled out Miami because it was just, even though I went to college there, I love it there. It's very saturated with architects and
Mm.
there's a lot going on. And probably not our speed. And we ended up in Tampa for a number of reasons. One of them is a very fast growing city. Really, as I spent more time there, really fell in love with it. But the firm that we acquired is just, they fit our culture perfectly,
Mm.
right? It almost is irrelevant if they're in Tampa, they could have been anywhere, right? They just fit kind of who we are. They too are moving on a technology basis, right? Trying to get things moving with their technology. They're very experimental in the way they go after their work. And they also do different sectors that we do, right? They do residential, which we never really did. They do
Oh,
multifamily. They
interesting.
do yeah, single family. They also do a lot of the same stuff that we do, like most architecture firms. But they do, super high end single family, and then they do, development single. So they'll do like 400 houses at once, kind of thing, right? A whole new communities, which is really interesting and
Mm.
different for us. And I think it's something that we can now take from Tampa, and they do it around a lot around Florida, but now bring that around to other areas in the United States and really increase our surface area as to what they're doing and what we're doing. But most importantly, they're great people, right? We hit it off right from the beginning,
Mm.
and we were able to combine forces. We've actually been, talking about this for a year. We made it official in January, but we had already started integrating together. For me, the whole M&A thing is new. I just like most things, I have no idea what I'm doing. And, we kind of figure it out as we go. We did another acquisition a few years back for a healthcare architecture firm called
Mhm.
Gertler and Mente. But they were in New York, so that was a little bit easier, right? They moved
Oh,
into our
sure.
office, and we actually knew a few of them, so it kind of made sense. This is the first one where we're doing where
Instead of getting off at this subway stop, you get off at the next subway stop.
exactly, it literally was that. I mean, they were like 6 blocks up.
Right.
Um, so that wasn't crazy. But this one is definitely, we have to pay attention to what we're doing. And, everyone there is important to us, right? We're not buying, we're buying the people, right? At the end of the
Yeah.
day. Where, and their skill set and what they do and their relationships. And it's important that they know that, we're not, this isn't Microsoft where we come in and we have like all these things where we're gonna, impose our corporate structure and all that stuff.
Yeah.
We don't have a corporate structure. we figure it out as we go and we grow together, and they got that and they understood it, which was awesome. So it's been a fun ride. And then we someone that we work with, that worked in New York with us, moved to Seattle, and because she wanted to move to Seattle and we didn't want to lose her as an employee. And ultimately we decided maybe you could start a Seattle office, and that's what she
Hmm.
did. And they've recently won some nice jobs. And then a friend of mine connected us with another friend, someone that I knew that was looking to leave a larger firm, and go out on their own, and we started a Phoenix office.
Hmm.
And that office has grown from 0 to 6 people, in less than 6 months, with some huge projects that they were able to bring with them. So a combination of kind of the acquisition strategy, the flag planter strategy, the relationship strategy, following the clients, and the goal is to continue to do that. We're going to kind of get everything right for the next 6 months, and then we've got our sights set on a few other cities and places. So
Well, I love hearing how smoothly it sounds like that's gone. I mean, just culturally, M&A can be super tricky. Um, but for me, so much comes back to like brand and brand strategy. And I'm curious, I mean, when it comes to M&A, there's nothing much trickier from a brand perspective than taking these existing names and existing teams and resumes and figuring out like how do you communicate that. So I'm curious, like, is the Tampa group already Mancini Duffy, or are they operating under the old name, or is there like some transition period, or what was kind of your thoughts on that
yeah,
approach?
it's kind of Mancini Duffy slash DSA. So it's really, we call it Mancini DSA. So DSA stands for design styles, architecture. And so they're well known in the market as that. And the last thing I'd want to do is just come in again with like this heavy-handed, hey, we're the corporate,
Mm.
whatever,
Yes.
and we want to just tell you how it is. Our strategy with that was, let's just double up on the branding, right? Get it out there that, hey, this is a great thing. They're expanding what they can do. We're expanding what we can do. Yes, it's an acquisition, but really it's more of a joining of forces. And can we, um now, so that all of the marketing material will have both on it. And the way we said was, let's see how it goes.
Hmm.
If it has to be that for the next 3 years, then that's what it is. Like, who cares, right? It doesn't really
Sure.
matter. They all have Mancini emails. They all are starting to become more Mancini, right? But at the end of the day, let the market tell us when they understand that transition
Hmm.
has happened, because it's really, the name's not that important. Again, it's the people, it's the relationships that are more important, and the fact that our cultures, blend so well. All the rest will just kind of happen naturally. We're going to start promoting more things and doing more stuff, and have Mancini parties and things like that, and do a lot of what we do. But again, the DSA name is there, and it'll be there until we don't need it.
Very cool. I think there's so much that you're building on sort of on the shoulders of the Mancini Duffy giants, the legacy of that brand. And so I'm curious with all the things that you're doing there today, how are you building this for the next generation of owners at Mancini Duffy?
That's a great question. I would say that our leadership team that we have is, we're all, I'm 51, so I still consider myself young, even though that's starting to sound older. Um, we have a young group with us, and it's been about 10 years since the core group has been with us, and that is our leadership team, and it's grown. And that team really understands kind of the vision of the firm, where they all fit in, and how at the end of the day, I'm not going to be here forever. I'll be here for quite a long time, but at some point it's going to transition out, and we're also going to continue to grow. And so the biggest thing for me is, I really do subscribe to being the dumbest in the room. The people that we have in the room are so talented and so smart, and you know they come to me for, let's say, the advice kind of thing, or what would I do in these situations. But at this point, because we're 130 people and we're in multiple states and we've got, lots and lots of projects happening, it wasn't like when we were 35 people and I knew every single project and what was happening. Like it's impossible to know that and also not fair to everybody.
Mm.
So everybody knows what their role is and everybody is able to make their own decisions, and a lot of times what'll happen, which I love, is that they will not come to me with a problem. They will come to me with, "This was the problem. This is how I solved it. I hope you're okay with it," kind of
Mm.
thing. And I'm always okay with it. First of all, if that's how you thought it should be solved, then that's probably how it should be solved. And we've done so much work with that group and even the firm in general about the relationship side of things, like if these are my relationships and they've taken them over, or how important the service side of what we do is, and making sure that those that relationships are preserved and that you don't, let's not be petty for small little things. Let's look at the big picture. This project might be losing money, or this client might be a pain on this project, but at the end of the day, they have a bunch of other projects and they do really nice work. And can we parlay sort of this project into others? And I have tons and tons of examples of kind of,
Mhm.
doing some of the scrappy work to then ultimately get the prized possession work. And I think everyone's seen that evolution and they get it, right? And they understand the importance of the client side of it.
Yeah, I mean, everybody wants the long-term client relationships, but you don't always just walk in the door and get all of the work right out of the gate. Like you got to be willing to do those little things, and it's cool
Yeah.
to hear even a firm of your size, espousing that as a strategy. So love that.
No, we start with some of the smallest projects. One of our largest clients we started with about 10 years ago. And I mean, he gave me like, move 4 desks over here and change this thing over here. And we want different chairs. And we were able to do it. And, we did a little bit bigger one, a little bit bigger one. And then we end up now we're doing international work for them and big
Yeah.
projects, hundreds of thousands of square feet. So you just got to prove yourself.
Well, when it comes to attracting new work, I mean, again, you've got a storied firm and firm name that's really well known, especially in the New York space. But I'm curious how you guys differentiate or attempt to stand out in the market. Like, what's kind of that lead message?
The lead message is definitely the technology, right? If we
Hmm.
can get into a room with a potential client and show them what we can do on the technology side, we win 9 times out of 10. The question is, how do we get that out? And, where do we I sometimes think we're a really well hidden secret, because people will come and say, "Oh, I didn't know you did this," or "I didn't know you did hotels," or "I only thought you did, corporate interiors," or "I
Mm.
only know you for whatever," right? And how do we get all of those messages out to everybody? And I think, we work with a company called Brand Groupies, and we've worked with them now, I think, for 7 or 8 years. And I credit a lot of our success to them because they really understood. It's Carrie and Lauren, and they really understood kind of the importance of getting me out there, my partners out there, and a lot of the other designers and architects in our firm, putting a face with projects, putting a face with, expertise, and understanding, this is where the design comes from or how we think or what we do. And so putting that out on social media and doing things like the podcast. They're the ones that forced me to do the podcast. I always joke with them. If they didn't force me to do it, I wouldn't have done it because, again, I don't like the sound of my voice. I was like, what the hell am I going to talk about? I don't interview people. This is crazy. And it was, no, you can do it, and frankly, we need content to promote.
Right.
And it's hard to say, like, can we point to a project that any of this stuff has actually gotten us? I don't know, but I would argue that all of it plays into it, right? It's all,
Hmm.
in a sense, a marketing and business development and advertising compilation, right? And in this day, right, it's we're not um we're not advertising per se, right? We're only as good as our last design, but this keeps us out there. And we're at the forefront of whoever is looking into architecture and interior design. We're there. And that's better than a lot of people. And if we're there, and as I said, if we can get in the door, we can win that project.
So, I'm a little biased when it comes to video in particular. Um, Obviously, I'm a big fan of podcasting, and I love that um, you're working with brand groupies because you and I wouldn't have chatted that first time as if it weren't for them. They made that initial introduction. But when it comes to video, in 2025, I don't think there's a much more powerful thing besides podcasting and video to get out to people who, in our business, we're trying to do business with people we know, like, and trust. So if you're talking about people you've never met before, how are they supposed to know, like, and trust you? And video and podcasts are some of those things that I feel like can kind of bridge that gap. So curious, like, outside of the podcasting, are you guys getting into video at all? Or are there any other elements that you're using, kind of non-traditional marketing vehicles?
Yeah, so we are actually going to start doing the podcast more on YouTube, for
Mm,
myself, and also doing a video series essentially with me, where I'm going to be talking more about, um, quite frankly, being a little bit more vulnerable, right? Showing like
mhm.
what it is to lead a company, and what lessons I've learned along the way. Because I'm an open book, as I've said probably a few times now on this. Is I don't have all the answers. I joke that I don't know what I'm doing, but I kind of don't know what I'm doing. You know what I mean? I'm figuring it out. I'm okay with admitting that. And the more I talk to other people in my position or other entrepreneurs, they'll say the same thing, like, "Oh, I don't know what I'm doing." Um, and so there's something there, right? And there's something authentic. I do like That's why I like the podcasting. I like podcasts in general because they're long form. You get to know
Mhm.
things. You get to know just as much about the host as you do about the host guests. I think when I first started my podcast, I didn't say anything. All I did was ask questions.
Yeah.
And I worked with like someone that helps you with kind of public speaking, and she said to me, "Oh, I listened to some of your podcasts. You know what the best parts are?" And I said, "No." And she said, "It's parts where you just talk about yourself." And I was like, "Really? That's interesting. Why would anyone want to hear about myself?" But then the more I thought about it, like if you listen to like professional broadcasters or like I was a
Mhm.
Howard Stern fan, like you actually like to hear about them more than the
Mhm.
guests. So I've started to infuse more of my story into things, and I think that resonates with people. It's authentic. That At the end of the day, I think that's the most important thing is just be authentic. So we'll do some video series and we'll do some podcasts that are more YouTube centric, and then we'll kind of see where it goes. Carrie and Lauren have all sorts of ideas for me. I just have to continue to come out of my shell.
Have you guys considered doing live streams with the podcast?
Not yet, but we've talked about it before. Yeah, that is definitely something I'd like to do. I've been on a few live streams,
Mhm.
so I don't know, I get like a little like nuts, like I have to hurry up and say everything, you know?
Right. Exactly. Yeah, I mean, I'm considering that for this show. Again, this is episode 1 of the new series, but obviously not ready for that just yet, but kind of curious to see where that all goes. I appreciate the fact that you're talking about, being open and honest and vulnerable. And you guys have done so many things amazingly well. But along those lines, like, where do you feel like you guys have room to improve, or what do you want to see yourself do differently or see the industry do differently? Like, what's kind of on your radar?
Um, well, the industry, I mean, the whole podcast is basically dedicated to that, right? Like, what can the
Yeah.
industry do better? I think to answer that specifically, what I've gotten out of it is the industry can do better, especially architects can do better about just speaking to other architects. And yes, we're in competition, but I think if we spend more time collaborating with each other and talking to one another, we can almost join forces in a sense and start to take some bits and pieces of our profession kind of back, right? Where we've let a lot of others come in and take parts of the profession. So I think that, again, being authentic and just talking to one another, collaborating together, like we're partnered with another architect who is a friend of mine for a large project for Netflix. And we wouldn't have
Mm,
gotten that project if we hadn't partnered with them, right? They had a certain expertise that we didn't. I had the initial relationship, and that's how we got that job. And, why not, do it together? It's been kind of great, right? And
absolutely.
we worked really well together. Or a lot of times on some of these big projects, you're forced to work with other architects, and rather than coming at it with, you're stepping on my toes, I'm stepping on your toes. I could have done this whole job myself and kept all the money for myself. Like, let's try to learn from one another and partner together and see what we do better. And then maybe if we do a really good job on this project, we could go after another project together and win another project together. And wouldn't we like to continue to grow both of our firms together, right? And sure, we may compete against other stuff, but who cares? Like, let's get some other things going. So I think the more we talk and the more we kind of really try to work together and instead of be such enemies or you know, outstrip each other's fees and drive down to the bottom, I think showing our value together as an industry really, really would help our industry as a whole.
Yeah, I totally resonate with that. I mean, as a and my former agency, we had something like 25 people at our height, and this new agency that I've started, it's just me on the payroll. Like I'm the solopreneur, but it's my job sometimes to assemble the Avengers and bring in. We need a media team. I need additional shooters for video, or I need to bring in other design help, and those are such fun projects to work on when you get to collaborate on those things. And then, like you said, like after we've done this really well, let's go win more work together. And I think that
Yeah.
it tells a really cool story. So I was listening back to our old episode in prepping for today's conversation. And, one of the things that you threw out was kind of drives you crazy that, when you move from the city to the suburbs, it seems like all your design taste kind of goes out the window or changes wildly, right? You go from like very modern sensibilities or the product maybe that you buy is that, and then you move out to the burbs and now you're stuck with whatever is sort of existing there. And I know you said that the guys in Tampa are doing a lot of more residential stuff, so curious if this gives you a chance to flex that question or sort of explore that further.
Oh, definitely. They do some really cutting edge things. They're, very modern houses, right? Very interesting locations, right? A lot of water locations,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of things with the environmental side, right? They think a little bit differently about how they're designing those houses. I don't know if it's a Florida thing or what, but there seems to be a little bit more flexibility on styles. And you get a pretty wide variety where in the Northeast, it's very rare to see a modern house, right, in a suburban
Mm-hmm.
environment. They're all some version of a colonial house, right, or some split level that now I'd argue now most have been turned into like modern farmhouse, which I'm
Oh,
not
right.
quite sure what style that is, right, or where that exactly came from. It's nice, don't get me wrong, but I didn't know that was like an architectural, thing until
Right.
recently. I just saw white houses with dark windows and was told, "Oh, no, that's called modern farmhouse." So,
Yes. Well, thinking more along your bold predictions for the future, what do you think is next for the industry? Or like, do you see a new hot market, or there are trends or other things in marketing? Like, what are you seeing that is like your bold prediction of where we're going to go next?
there's a couple things I can think of, right? I think you're gonna see more mergers and acquisitions because I do think you see, um, uh, the market is harder and harder, right, to make money, right? Things are more and more expensive on the construction side, and therefore it drives the professional fees down. And so I think you're going to see larger firms get larger,
Mm,
and so on, because it's easier to compete, right? It takes just as much manpower to do a 10,000 square foot, job as it does to do a 75,000 square foot job, right? It's the same amount
sure.
of people, it's the same schedule, it's the same everything, right? But obviously the fee is higher on a larger project. So how do you balance all of that stuff? It's hard to do a lot of little projects with a big firm. So I think in order to stay big, you have to get bigger. And even though that sometimes can be counterintuitive. So I think you're going to see a lot of that. I do think in our industry, in the architecture and design world, and I'm already starting to see it, is you're starting to see firms, what I refer to as kind of take back parts of the profession. So you're
Mm,
seeing firms become more one-stop shop. So you're coming to an architect now for design, helping manage the whole process for the client, maybe even do procurement. So go out and find the materials for it, or find if it's an interiors project, find the furniture, and source all of that. And then hold the contracts for all of those things and store them and then deliver them to site. And then you're seeing more and more do more of design build where they're also the contractor, right? So this isn't going to be for the giant projects and the millions of square feet kind of, you know, huge projects, but your average size projects, you're already seeing that, especially kind of where you are, right?
mhm.
Um, Outside of the Northeast, that's a much more popular delivery method where you're saying to the architect or the designer, hey, this is what I want. I'd like to be involved in it. And then I'd like you to take it all the way and finish it for me so I can move in, as opposed to it being broken up into 10, 20 different parties that are involved, right? So
Sure.
already seeing that, which is pretty interesting to see. So I think you're going to see that shift. Um, as far as like wild predictions for architecture, I don't know. I think AI will play a role in it. I don't, and construction technologies and construction, people investing more money in new ways of doing construction. I think that will take a much longer time than people think it is. I was just at a giant headquarters building, and it's so it's so incredibly complicated. We're doing a small part of it. We're doing the restaurant part of it, and just the systems alone, and where the systems are coordinated, and how the fire alarm works, and how it's separate from one side of the building to the other. And there's so much that goes into these things that to think that a robot or something like that is going to do those installs or design it, we're way away from that. I mean, it's some of this stuff is so complicated, and you just need to know what you're doing, right? And I get it, on
Mhm.
paper, an AI can do it, faster, but we do live in the built environment, in the physical environment, and someone has to physically get up and staple something into a concrete roof, and there's all of that stuff. So I'm not saying it's not going to happen, but we're a ways away. I do think there are some really kind of forward thinking kinds of architecture, and I was thinking about it like earlier. More of like architecture that I think would integrate with AI, right? So,
Mm,
you know, um, maybe the AI can change a little bit of the physical environment, right? Maybe your furniture knows you like to sit a certain way, and the furniture can adjust, right, based on kind of how you sit. So I think you'll start seeing things like that. If there really are these Neuralink, things that happen that I, keep hearing about, people are putting Neuralinks in their brain and that kind of stuff.
right.
I don't know how true that actually is, or if it's just one person. Um, I think that's kind of cool, because then maybe there's like a more of a memory activated architecture where, instead of having pictures of your family up on the wall, you can interact with the physical environment, right? And there's no pictures on the wall, but you see those pictures of your family on the wall. I don't know. So I think there's some bolder kind of cool things out there, but I think we're quite a while away from it.
Well, I think it comes down to so much too that this is such a relationship driven industry, and to think that we're going to hand over the relationship side to AI or to bots anytime soon feels a little bit like a stretch. Like there are probably so many things that technology and AI can help us do better, faster. I really appreciated your image sourcing example. I think is a great example of like how to take the mundane, silly things of like scrolling through Google search results and figuring out what you like.
Yeah.
Um,
And getting crappy resolution
yeah,
images too, by the
yeah, right,
way.
yeah,
That always drove
yeah.
us nuts.
Yeah, we'll take the occasional six-fingered man as long as we can get a space that looks cool. Well, hey, before we wrap up here, tell our listeners where they can find your podcast and you on the interwebs, and also Mancini Duffy.
Yeah, I mean, our website is obviously manciniduffy.com. We have a very active Instagram, which you can just search up and see that. And again, Brand Groupies does a great job with that. My podcast, just The Anti-Architect, I have the website, theantiarchitect.com, and that'll link you to kind of it's on all the Spotify's and the Apple Music and all of that. So it's kind of out there. And you can see more on my LinkedIn and things like that.
Very cool. Any parting thoughts or challenges for our listeners before we let you go?
Let me think. Challenges for the listeners. I wonder, because you are on the marketing and advertising side. I would challenge and I'd be open to feedback of. I was thinking about this the other day when I was driving. There's these billboards I see everywhere that say, "I got hurt in New Jersey.com," right? And it's like an
Right.
advertisement for a lawyer.
Hmm.
And I've always wondered, like, why architects don't advertise. Like, we don't advertise. It's a huge I've been told, like, "No, you can't do that. That's, like, against the rules." I don't know whose rules these are or why.
Hmm.
Like, why isn't there a Mancini Duffy billboard? Is it too expensive? I mean, that could very well be. I've never actually looked to see how much anything
Yes.
costs like that. Why don't we advertise on the radio or something like that? So I'd be curious as to what your listeners think of that, like, as feedback. Like, what why don't we advertise, and
Yeah.
should we? And should I be the asshole that goes and does it? So I don't know.
So I actually know a little bit about this nerdy detail is that
Oh, nice.
up until the 70s, it was the AIA standards of practice deemed it was unethical to advertise a professional service. And then SMPS, who I worked for 3 years before starting this firm, was actually part of what they had originally called the Bird Doggers Society, became SMPS, and they helped push forward to make it legal and ethical to advertise. So the reality is you could have had that billboard up this whole time. I mean, I don't know what New York's laws are, so maybe New Jersey and New York are weird, but in many states you absolutely can advertise, but it's certainly not a long-standing cultural practice in the industry.
I love it. It's cool. Yeah, I mean, if you can have that, I got hurt in New Jersey thing, you
Gosh,
know.
I I got rid of my colonial architecture from thisarchitect.com.
That's right. That's great.
Very cool. Well, Christian, it was great catching up with you, sir, and hope you have a great rest of the day. Thanks so much for joining us on the Bold Brand podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you. I'm honored to be on the first episode. I really, really appreciate it. It was a great conversation.
Great. We'll talk to you soon. Thank you for joining us today on the Bold Brand Show. For all of today's show notes and links to our sponsors, head over to boldbrand.show. Be sure to subscribe to our email newsletter where I'll update you on the latest episodes and other exciting things happening at Bold Brand. If you liked today's episode, do me a favor and share this episode with a colleague. Over at boldbrand.show, you can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and everywhere you get your podcasts, including YouTube, where you can watch full versions of each episode and join the conversation by commenting below. The Bold Brand Show is produced by yours truly, Josh Miles, and is a product of Bold Brand LLC, a branding and video agency for AEC firms based in Denver, Colorado. Visit boldbrand.com to learn more, or hit that orange button up top to schedule a time to chat about your branding or video project. Catch us next time where we chat with another bold innovator in the AEC industry. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.